Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality. While listening, you'll be exposed to inspiring, empowering, and unifying perspectives that I'm highly confident will yield stellar results in your life if you opt to try them on for size. Also, at optimistic.tv, we have officially begun releasing the first few episodes of our new late-night style, consciousness-elevating video variety talk show, Optimistic, which features live visionary art, soul share interviews, retreat guests here at the Mystic Manor, as well as live musical performances. I'm also super excited to announce that we are currently making plans to release the rest of Season 1 on my personal favorite online streaming service. So stay tuned to optimistic.tv to follow the unfolding development of this exciting Optimistic expansion, as we'll be posting more info and release dates there soon. And in the meantime, be sure to check out, of course, the first few episodes at optimistic.tv as well. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have my friend Daniela Gill here with me on the show. Daniela is a spiritual teacher known for the clarity with which she channels the Akashic Records. Always fun to explore the Akashic Records. Hello, Daniela. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, it's so good to have you. I know we've talked about doing this for quite some time, and you've been here to the Mystic Manor many times for events and co-creating magic here, and so I'm really excited to share the gift that is Daniela with the world. So yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah, thank you.
So I always like to start off with a very predictable opening question, a cliche opening question, and here it is. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
Ooh, Akashic Records, sharing Akashic perspective, coming into this elevated, expanded state of consciousness and sharing these messages, these transmissions, these insights that help anchor in more love and more trust on behalf of humanity. So I'd say that, and also more play and more joy and learning about the nature of life and sharing that with people. Yes. So that we can come together as one human family to create this new experience together, one where we are coming from a place of love and coming from a place of trust and infinite possibility, and more aligned with the true expansive infinite possibility nature of reality, as well as our interconnectedness and interdependence.
Yes, I call that the Willy Wonka answer. So you just kind of kept going past the 10 floors out into the cosmos. Oh. I'm not complaining about it. I don't know if you've seen Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, but the elevator goes in outer space, and yeah. So very cool. I'm with you. I always refer to it as the ultimate nature of reality, and that is it's such an exciting thing to explore, and it's kind of like a breadcrumbs, I feel, that are being left for us all as humanity as we continue to expand our awareness and understanding of what the ultimate nature of reality is and what our place in it is. And it's quite a fascinating journey. And I know you've must have had a very interesting journey to get to the point where you do the work that you do, reading the Akashic Records. And, so maybe two-parted question here, and you do them in either order. Love to hear the backstory of how you got to where you are. And then, of course, maybe wherever it feels relevant, explaining for those who aren't familiar what the Akashic Records are. You can give a little explanation of that.
Okay, so I've always been very intuitive and very connected to the experiences of the people around me. And I always thought that other people were experiencing life in the same way. So an example was when I was like two examples I can think of when I was a child. One time where I got on the school bus, maybe in kindergarten, and my friend was really mean to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, why is she being so mean? She's usually so kind. And I recognized in that moment that she had had a fight with her older brother, and her older brother had been really mean to her and essentially bullied her that morning. And she was angry and taking it out on me. And I was constantly having insights like this and thinking that the whole world was functioning in that way.
Wow. So she didn't tell you this. You just perceived this yourself.
Yeah, I just knew it. And yeah, I was always feeling people really deeply. Another time this was in first grade. I remember this so clearly. I'm sitting there at my table eating a cupcake, and I'm feeling like so confused in my body. Like, I don't know if I want this cupcake, but it's so good, but I feel like nauseous. I didn't really understand what nausea was back then. It kind of felt like I was going to throw up, but I don't think I'd actually ever thrown up at that time in my life, but I just felt really weird feelings. And I was like, what is going on? What is going on? And I'm looking around, like feeling these weird feelings, but it didn't feel like it was totally mine. So I was very confused. And then the girl next to me just threw up all over the table that I was sitting on.
Whoa.
So I realized, like, oh, that wasn't me. That was her.
Interesting.
And yeah, so that's what I was like as a child, very intuitive and open.
Interesting. And so how did that sort of experience as a child, and obviously very empathic and intuitive, how did that sort of transition into you learning to focus on the Akashic Records?
Well, I started teaching yoga. I started facilitating breath work. I knew that I was very intuitive, very psychic. Sometimes I would inadvertently end up doing psychic readings for my clients. And then one time I went to a retreat, and one of the facilitators offered a complimentary Akashic record reading. And I had really no interest. I thought she was going to tell me about something about like my past lives, something I didn't know what the Akashic records were. I was like, I don't really want to learn about any records. Like, sounds silly, but I really loved her vibe. So eventually I ended up taking her up on that free reading. And she said a bunch of things that made no sense at all. They were just complete nonsense. They were very symbolic. I didn't understand them. And I just dismissed the entire experience as a total flop. And everything that she said came true in a roundabout way around 6 months later.
Wow.
So I immediately became very interested in the Akashic Records. And then I ordered a book on Amazon by Linda Howe on the Akashic Records, read the book, got to the center part where we are prompted to say a prayer to open the Akashic Records. And I immediately called my mom. I'd been doing psychic readings with her and she loved it. And I was like, hey, can I try out this thing with you? And she's like, yeah, sure. So I opened up the Akashic Records using her name. And I was immediately flooded with like, whoa, this potent energy. Like, it felt like I had like taken ecstasy or something. Like, my whole body was like vibrating with this frequency of love. And I was perceiving my mom through the most pristine lens ever. It was complete and total unconditional love, complete acceptance for her, like such a divine perspective on her life. I had so much clarity on all of her questions. I was able to see her upbringing, all of her pains, her traumas, her karmas. I was able to see her relationship with her father. Her father came through with utmost clarity. So it became like a mediumship reading at some points. And
wow.
It was very clear. Meanwhile, before, my psychic readings were kind of like hit or miss. You know, sometimes felt like I was reaching for information versus just allowing this divine love to flow through in whatever form it wanted to take.
Wow. And was your mother just like shocked at that time, or you both shocked, or?
Yeah. I remember her crying a lot and just, I don't think she kind of knew what to do with it. It was a very different experience for us both.
Wow. How long ago was that?
That was actually pretty recently. I want to say 2017.
Okay. So it's a relatively new journey for you. And so in the years since, you have been, full on, that's been your primary focus, reading the Akashic Records?
Yeah.
Cool.
Got really into it. Almost immediately stopped everything else, quit all my yoga teaching gigs, became pretty obsessed right from the beginning.
Wow. And for those who aren't familiar, can you give an explanation of what the Akashic Records are?
I experience them as the subtle energetic imprint of everything that has ever happened, everything that is happening, and everything that could happen. So they're like, other cultures call them the mind of God, or the book of life. The Bible refers to them as the book of life. And I experience them somewhat as a quantum field. It's like the void from which all life springs that holds within it the knowing of all that has been, all that is, and all that could be.
Right.
I feel like while we're in this human incarnation, we don't necessarily access the Akashic Records. I don't feel that the human mind can possibly comprehend the totality of the records, which is infinity and eternity. And the human mind is designed to make sense of this seemingly limited linear experience of life. Ultimately, the Akashic Records are the culmination of all perspectives, which is filled with so many different paradoxes and like seemingly contradictory perspectives. So I feel like we don't necessarily access the Akashic Records in their purity and their fullness while we're in these human bodies, but we can come into this elevated, expanded state of consciousness where we are viewing life through a perspective that is more resonant with the perspective of the Akashic Records.
Interesting. So in a sense, it gives you, I always refer to it as, first thing that comes to mind is like Google for, the universe.
Yeah.
And it, it would make sense if you're tapping into the Akashic Records, it's sort of integrating. Would you say it's safe to say it's like integrating your higher self and viewing things from the more, unified perspective with the, all angles of and perspectives of the situation or challenge, or just an expanded view always is going to sort of lead to more wisdom, I think, right? Would you say that that's sort of what happens for someone who is proactively and combining their gifts and, starting to tap into this information?
Yeah, absolutely. It liberates us from a lot of our limiting beliefs and from all of the distortions created by our judgments and our expectations and all of our conditioning, which is constantly skewing the way that we view reality and how we interface with reality. And when we start to create a practice of coming into Akashic perspective, we are continuously rising above that perspective, and we're encompassing more perspectives, more than just our own like limited understanding from just our own ego, our own one perspective. We're suddenly able to see other people. It opens us up to greater empathy and to far greater wisdom, because we can see one thing from many different perspectives. And it is a higher perspective, just like, the bird flying above can see what's below from so many different angles.
Right. Yeah, it's I always feel like it's, when you're expanding your perspectives in any way, shape, or form, you have more of your higher self coming through. And, this is sort of the dance that we all are embarking on, is to become more of our, merging our ego self, our physical self with this, our expanded self. And it seems like a great path to do that, tapping into the records.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you actually tap in, and we actually have had a few times over the years, going back to the first Soul Share, interview style, podcast that I did. Let's see, we're around episode 1250 at this point. This episode 3 is an Akashic record reader. Shout out to my friend Sue Krebs, going way back, the first guest I had on the show. And so, and then more recently, Leah Lau, who you are familiar with and friends with as well, was on maybe a few months, 2-3 months ago, something like that. And she did a little mini reading. So when you are tapping into the records, is there a process to get there? Is it something that's as easy as 1, 2, 3 for you to open the records? What is that like?
I like to say a prayer.
Gotcha.
And the first part of the prayer is out loud, and then the second part is silent. And as I say that prayer, I experience like this shift in my consciousness.
Interesting. So you can actually kind of sort of like someone who is channeling can feel an energetic shift. Would you say it's comparable from what you've heard described there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Well, listeners probably know what's coming. I I am always game for any sort of, if I have anyone who has any intuitive gift whatsoever, I'm like, can we see? Can we see? Can you channel? Can you give a reading? Can you know? So if you're up for it, I would love to, go into the Akashic Records with you a little bit and maybe explore and see what messages come through.
Ooh, yes, I would love to.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Okay, so I'm going to open up the records for positive head listeners.
Perfect.
Spirit, support me in coming into an elevated, expanded state of consciousness so that I may become one with your perspective. Set aside the totality of my personality so that I may serve as a clear channel for your divine loving guidance and knowing. Allow me to see the positive head listeners as the positive head listeners are seen in the light of the Akashic Records. Help me to know them as they are known in the mind of God. Enable me to share all the communication of our masters, teachers, and loved ones with integrity, clarity, and love. And so it is. The Akashic Records are now open.
Wonderful. So is there anything that instantly comes through, that's sort of on the tip of your tongue when you open the records? And specifically, I love how you can, sort of tap into the collective of anyone who would ever hear this podcast or is listening to this podcast. Is there anything that is sort of front and center that comes through for us?
Yeah, the first thing I'm seeing for this audience in particular is to trust yourselves. It feels like so many listening have this well-developed intuition, yet there can still be a tendency to look outside, to perhaps turn to other teachers or the news or the media, social media for information, for insight, for perspective. Yet we are all connected to this divine perspective, this inner knowing. And this inner knowing is connected to the web of all life. We are connected to all consciousnesses. Like every single one of us, our psyche is connected to the psyche of every other human being on the planet, of everything that is currently unfolding. And when we can truly trust that connection, we can begin to receive insight and information from that connection. And then we can receive the real news. Because as we know, there's so much playing out on the world at this time where we're not quite trusting the news, the media. It feels skewed. It feels manipulated. It feels like it's, eliciting all of this fear and in a sense being used as a mechanism to control us in some ways. And it doesn't feel totally clear. And so it's really time that we turn within and listen to our own channels. We all have access to this knowing and you can trust it. And for so long, many of us have been essentially gaslighting ourselves, like feeling something, knowing something, but then doubting it and perhaps not validating it because it contradicts the official narrative or it contradicts what other people believe. But what we're seeing happening on the planet at this time is that we're awakening out of a period of time where we just sort of did life because it was this way. It's like we're all just doing things because it was this way. It's like, oh, get a 9-to-5 job, get married, have kids, have this type of life because that's just how it is. That's what's expected of me. And we're starting to awaken to the fact that we are these divine creators who can do absolutely anything within this experience of life. And within that, we're no longer needing to live into other people's stories or expectations or beliefs around what life is and what is capable for us as a human being or how we should and could be living. So it's really time that we sort of like reclaim our power, our sovereignty, our own desired experience of life. And know that if you don't like what you're seeing on the planet, if it doesn't resonate with you, well, it doesn't have to be that way. And it is up to you to create that shift, and it is up to you to create that change. And the more that we elevate our frequency and elevate our consciousness, the more power we yield, the more present we are. And that brings us so much power, and that power allows us to create. And it feels like many of us, like I'm tuning into the listeners, it feels like some of us are holding this tendency to sort of look to somebody else. Like maybe there's some sort of external authority figure that's going to do something about this. Like, whoa, look at the way we're treating the environment. I hope the government does something. Like I hope some external paternal, like, parental figure does something to create this shift. But it's like, no, that's you. That's why you're here. That's why you chose to incarnate at this time. You are here on a mission, and it's to create the changes that you wish to see and to really honor your sacred life force energy, because there's so much that you can do with it. You are so powerful, and you are not a victim to the circumstances of life at this time and to this unfolding. You are a gift to life to help create the change. And sometimes when we are not showing up fully for what is possible for us in this life, we can get really bogged down by what is. It's like, oh, I hate this and I hate that, and I hate that the governments are doing this. And like, we want to reclaim our energy away from just resisting and despising and complaining about and not feeling great about what is, and then redirect all of our energy into creating something new. And when we are doing that, then we naturally feel so optimistic, and we are filled with so much hope, because we know that we are doing our part. And we can really like use all of this energy that many of us are feeling at this time, like almost like a disillusionment, like a heartbreak around all the darkness that many of us are being faced with, that what we're seeing exists on the planet and within humanity, using that as fuel to inspire us to create the world we wish to experience on behalf of all. And if we are judging humanity and hating humanity, then it makes it really hard for us to really want to show up in service to humanity. So we really have to let go of a lot of those energies and allow love to bloom in our hearts. Love and forgiveness, and like continuously, the message is continuously practice coming into an elevated perspective so that you can see the truth of humanity, the innocence within all hearts, and know that all of these behaviors that we see that do not resonate with us, that feel so dark, that feel so evil, they're coming from pain. And ultimately, it all stems from this very pure and innocent space. People are only revealing to us how they have been treated, and everybody's ultimately doing their best.
Yeah.
Right now we're seeing on the planet, so much is coming through right now. So right now we're seeing on the planet a lot of like a huge purge of mistrust, because humanity has undergone so many atrocities at the hands of each other. We've undergone wars. We've had like just so many insane things, so many murders and like rapes and like dictatorships and corrupt governments. And if you think of like the Holocaust and the Trail of Tears, so like slavery, like, whoa, we've done all of that. So humanity at this point is, they don't trust each other, and they're really paranoid for good reason. And that is being purged from the collective human psyche, because at this time, humanity is ascending, the planet is ascending. And in that ascension, we cannot take our mistrust with us. We cannot take our paranoia of each other with us. So don't necessarily believe from an intuitive space your mistrust, your paranoia. Some people think it's like intuition. It's like, oh, that's because this is coming, or that's coming, or humanity is going to do this, or they're going to do that. But we are starting to wake up to the truth that everybody is actually doing their best. And this like very strongly contradicts a lot of the narratives and the ideas that people are holding in their psyches because of the past. But what we need to become aware of is how powerful we are as creators. So our expectations for how somebody else behaves actually impacts how they behave.
Right.
So if we expect our world leaders to be like these monsters, selfish, greedy, then we are caging them into that kind of behavior.
Right.
Like we're actually imposing that energy onto them. we're constantly creating each other. We are so interconnected, far more than many of us have realized.
Yeah, I've stated that very thing so many times and used the example of there's supposedly, years ago when Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt were together, and this is a story that's floating around. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's the point of the story is great. And it's, their relationship was on the rocks, and he was, she was losing all this weight and, unhealthy. And it was like, it looked like certainly the end. She's depressed and, anorexic. And he started just focusing only on what, loving things, bringing her flowers, the good in her, all those things. And then it just totally revitalized and brought their relationship back. And, she started getting healthy. And so I love the story. Like I said, I don't know if it's actually true or not, but I love the idea behind it and that we are, as you said, creating each other with our beliefs around each other. And whenever you play with this on a small scale, it's a great experiment to play with. That person at the office, who constantly gets under your skin. Try going in today and, or I guess no one goes into the office anymore, but some of you probably do, but, or that family member that you're going to see this weekend that you just know they're going to get under your skin and do that thing they've done forever. And instead of giving energy to that, I challenge you to actually hold the vision, do a little exercise to envision them being coming in showing up differently, showing up as their best and brightest self. As you also said, Daniela, it's like a lot of people are just wounded, and that's what you're seeing. If you think of someone as, it's like a cute animal caught in a trap. If you were to cut a little, what we would otherwise think is this adorable animal, but if it's caught in a trap and you go up to it, it may, raccoon, it's going to try and attack you. It's scared, it's hurt, and if you can understand that people who are acting out like that, they're caught in a trap and they're hurting. And if you can start bringing some of that perspective, it really is fascinating when you start playing with creating them to show up differently by shifting your lens and setting an intention and getting playful with the universe to co-create, everyone and everything that you see.
Yeah. In this ascension process, like we're all moving through it together. So we're coming into a time where we are really needing to become so solid within ourselves that we can hold space for the healing of one another. And sometimes healing looks like, playing out our traumas and then co-creating with the support, the love, the clarity of another being, a new story, a new imprint.
Right.
Anchoring in more trust, more love. And we're really going to need to do the inner work so that we can show up for each other in this way and truly offer ourselves to one another in this way, knowing that we truly are all extensions of ourselves and we can only do this together. So we're really going to have to learn how to work together in all of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And bring out the best in each other.
Before we continue on with today's episode, I'd like to take a quick moment to tell you about our sponsor, Curable. Curable is an app that takes a different approach to helping people manage and alleviate their chronic pain. I know it's been hard to watch my own father, who I've always viewed as indestructible, become increasingly limited in his movements due to chronic knee pain and having to deal with the frustration of not knowing how to treat it effectively. Fortunately, modern neuroscience is illuminating more and more how chronic pain develops and worsens. Studies show that the brain and central nervous system play a much more significant role in chronic pain than we once thought, and by retraining the brain to process pain differently, we can reduce symptoms and gain more control. So if you're struggling with chronic pain, the Curable app can help you get your life back by guiding you through science-backed techniques designed to help you overcome fear of movement, symptoms, and never getting better. It also offers strategies that can help retrain your brain's response to pain and in many cases reduce the intensity and frequency of symptoms. Curable offers both a free and paid version of the app. if you use our link to sign up and get started with the free version, you'll get 50% off if you ever decide to upgrade to a subscription. Just go to getcurable.com/positivehead to set up your free account. That's spelled GETCURABLE.com/positivehead. Yeah, agreed. And it's it's everything when you start realizing that, this stuff is as messy as it looks out there, especially right now. You said you said another thing. You said start looking at all that pain and trauma and all the upheaval out there. Look at it as fuel to actually power us into the next greatest and greatest version of humanity. And I always use I always compare humanity to the caterpillar and the butterfly's journey, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Yes. Where it's this caterpillar destroys everything it sees. My mother is just telling me, "Oh, my favorite geranium just got eaten up by a caterpillar." I told her this story, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, that just happened to me. My geraniums just got destroyed." And it's like, what that destruction actually, this caterpillar, the Imaginell cells start popping up, and the caterpillar cells of course at first destroy the Imaginell cells, like, oh, what is this invader? It doesn't belong. And then over time, more and more Imaginell cells start popping up. Then they start working together. And when that happens, the shift happens within the caterpillar. It goes into the chrysalis. All the pain of the caterpillar cells turn into a goo that is a fuel for these Imaginell cells that ultimately transform this creature into the butterfly. So, it's instantly what I thought of when you said it's all fuel, because I say that all the time. It's all fuel. And by shifting your perspective to see and live, and navigate your reality looking through this lens, like we talked about earlier, I truly believe you're now seeing things as your higher self. You're integrating this expanded Akashic view, right? Higher self view.
Yeah.
So I'd love to get, while you have the records open, one of the things that I'm always really fascinated with is this idea of, soul family. And of course it's all one. And then the way I view it is, it's also, if you think of source, God, consciousness, the universe, whatever you want to call it, you think of it as a giant infinite tree. There happens to be branches on a tree and then leaves on that branch. So it's like close, I view any of us who, for example, would be connecting on this podcast as, leaves that happen to be, flapping in the winds of eternity together on the same branch, right? Of this infinite tree. And so I'm curious from the Akashic perspective, what that looks like or how you would describe that. And am I accurate in that perspective that everyone connecting here is there's some close familial ties, which is why we've all even come together and co-created and connected in this way.
Yeah. These are such potent transformative times. And it feels like those of us that are being brought together, this community really is in many ways so small, and we've known each other and we've worked together before. And sometimes from a Akashic perspective, it looks like we're collectively on this mission together. And in some ways it's almost like we've trained together before, because this is a big thing. Humanity, Mama Gaia, is undergoing this ascension. This is major. This is the fastest, most accelerated transformation that humanity has ever gone through. On this timeline. And yeah, it feels like we are all so interconnected in so many different ways, whether it's having lived together before or just having many of the same, what appear to me as soul streams, the same sort of essence, creating our souls. So much resonance between us. And as we remember more and more of who we are and like bring in more of our soul into this incarnation, which is becoming more available to us as the frequency on the planet rises. More of our souls can come in. As we do more of that, we're like also remembering each other more and recognizing each other more quickly, and feeling that resonance is becoming so clear. Like the moment we meet someone, it's like, you, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, I experience that a lot, that familiarity where you meet someone, you're like, gosh, we're just meeting. I always say, like a good friend of mine, Coco, once put it, she goes, nice to see you again, and/or for the first time. And it always, more and more it feels like that. So it's just fascinating. What a fun way to rediscover each other and explore, through it's such a romantic notion to me, this idea of us sort of finding each other again and again, throughout eternity and physicality.
It's so beautiful. And it's like we come into this forgetfulness and then we just fall back in love again and back into like divine union and ultimate bliss and harmony. And then we forget. And it truly is this eternal love story. And it's like, that's currently what humanity is awakening into, the love that is here, the love that is present, the love of our planet, the like unconditional love and generosity, and the love within souls of all human beings, and the innocence that actually drives every single behavior.
Yeah, I think that's easy for, to take a figure like Donald Trump, which is like, there's so much, polarity and so much strong emotion around on both sides, people who support and a lot of people listening to this podcast, probably the majority of them are like not a fan. And, and I'm sure there's fans in there too, it's a mixture, but, ultimately, he's a great person who you can look at and see that. To me, if I put on the lens of seeing his innocence or childlike qualities, and it's sort of like, okay, whatever you would get mad at or be disgusted by, it's sort of like, how mad can you be at the dog for peeing on the carpet? It's where it's at, and it's a puppy still. It hasn't learned to go outside yet, or whatever. It's like, it's just apparent that this is someone who is. To me, I find it helps me to bring like. Even using that character as an example, just looking at it through almost a humorous lens. It's like a cartoon character a bit, and it's like it can make me laugh. And as opposed to alternatively, I could take people out there take a lens, and he's really triggering and really upsetting and it's like, okay, this is innocence, and we've given someone has power that maybe is less developed than we would prefer, and let's just not let it cause us to lose our cool, right? Because if maybe that's the whole reason for this character being in power. And I'm just kind of keep going with this, with Donald Trump as an example, but you can apply this to anyone in so many different things. It's like, if something is really triggering you, it's, your triggers are your treasures, right? And so what is that doing for you to help you to actually grow into the next and greatest version of yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Every single trigger is a golden opportunity to open our hearts even more and to embrace more of our power and to also clarify our perspective. And Donald Trump is such a beautiful example. I love that you brought him up, because from Akashic perspective, he is the ultimate catalyst for the evolution of our consciousness. And he is playing out he's playing out the human ego, but on this like grand stage.
Right.
And he's revealing, like, he's helping us become aware of our tendencies as humanity.
Mm-hmm.
He's helping us become aware of our ego and how it can play out at times.
Right.
He's bringing so much awareness to us. It is such a gift on so many levels. And when you really tune into like, what is the real impact here, you'll see that it is exactly what humanity needs to grow up, to mature, to evolve, to move into creating these new governing systems that actually have the well-being of all human beings in mind.
Love that. I love that. What a reframe, right? Like, look at the gift of this catalyst. You want to, that contrast. Oftentimes we always end up almost on what we want by seeing that which we don't, right? And if it's that contrast is such a gift to say, now I know, oh, wow, okay, this is really blatant and loud. Okay, let's not do that again. Let's not continue that within ourselves. Let's not, it's embarrassing. It's, whatever it is that it serves you. And ultimately, it's all happening for you.
It really is. And from a Akashic perspective, like the way that I see Donald Trump is he's playing a role that is so challenging. He has had to almost consciously go so deep into ignorance and unconsciousness in order to behave the way that he is behaving, yet it is coming from a certain level of mastery. It's almost like he's like this, and this may sound very strange and be triggering for some people listening, but the way that I see it when I come into Akashic perspective, it's like he's coming from this actual very high level of mastery, this highly evolved soul who is holding this very delicate, powerful role in the world right now and having to do it just right and the most perfect way to be like, yo guys, wake up. Like, this is where you're at. This is what you're creating. I am an example. Like, he is just an exaggerated example of what many of us hold within us. And as we become aware of it in the external world and start to be like, I don't like that. Then when we see it play out within ourselves, we can be like, whoa, and actually recognize it. And he's serving as that mirror for us. And it's a tremendous gift.
Such a fascinating perspective. And, when you say he's a highly evolved soul, what I instantly start, my brain instantly starts going, okay, what does that look like? How does that from the other side? What is the mechanics of this evolved soul yet appearing as Donald Trump, which, many would say seems completely unevolved and fully immersed in this ignorant perspective or however you stated it. And is it like, okay, this is an advanced soul that is chosen to pull out this part of themselves that still needs to be worked through. They kind of put on a mask, so to speak, and say, okay, I'm going to tap into this part of myself or the part of humanity or part of the collective consciousness and play this role. But really, on the other side of the curtain, I'm super advanced. How do you see it from an Akashic perspective?
Yeah, I'm seeing him as this incredibly advanced soul with so much purity in his heart and so much love and so much devotion to humanity that then came into the human incarnation, but took on a lot of human trauma related to the ego, to the patriarchy, to all these different things, because he is the one that can then catalyze the masses to begin to transmute and heal all of that by him embodying so much of it and living it out in such a whoa type of way. And I feel like he has been in a way designed to create maximum impact but minimize harm. And I know that's really hard for people to hear sometimes because it's what he's doing, he's creating so much harm, but it's humanity, it's just creating so much harm, period.
Right.
And he's really helping us switch direction more quickly. He's yo, his higher self is yo, we need to change course now. So let me make that so obvious to you.
Right.
So you cannot brush anything under the rug anymore. Let me just bring it out to the open. Yeah. This is what we're dealing with, guys. Here it is.
Yeah. Yeah. He's the greatest bringer out and opener there's ever been or ever could be. As I'm sure he would tell you.
He's ridiculous, yeah.
He's the greatest of the greatest. He knows more about bringing things into the open than anyone. Oh, man, that's so good. So, yeah, it is such a refreshing lens. Even taking on that perspective, for those of you out there who have a lot of, challenging energy around, government or Donald Trump or whatever, how does that feel in your body, in your mind, in your heart, to take on that perspective? that Danielle is sharing here, right? It instantly you feel levity, right? You feel lighter. You feel like, okay, you're seeing and then therefore feeling the way your higher self does about it. And it's, talk about enlightenment, right? It lightens you up.
Yeah. And it frees up so much of our energy, because at this time, like I'm seeing it within the audience, right? As I'm in this collective field, I'm seeing how for many of us, a lot of our energy is going towards, I hate what is, and I want to fight it, and like I want to resist it, and I don't like it. And our energy is like feeding that. But when we see the innocence, when we see how it's all actually playing out from Akashic perspective, we reclaim all of our energy. And when we have all of our energy, we can then direct it towards the creation of what it is we actually want to be experiencing.
Right.
Towards building something new, instead of like fighting the way things are, which is ultimately just shutting us down. It's closing our hearts. It's constricting us.
Yes.
And when we're constricted, we're not flowing with as much of life force energy as we could be. And we need all of our life force energy at this time to undergo this transformation and to hold space for the rest of humanity as we undergo this.
Yes. Yes. What you resist persists, right? What you accept, you can move through. And it's like Mother Teresa, who, when they asked her to march against, the war in Vietnam, she said, I'll never do that, but have a march for peace and I'll be there, because she understood how important it was to not resist anything and to, focus on, being for what you want to see more of. And I think that is more pertinent than ever with so many things that are playing out on our planet right now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of Newton's laws of physics, right? Like whatever you push, like if you push up against a wall, it's going to push up with equal force.
Right.
So that's how we keep these energies alive in many ways, by pushing up against them. We're fueling them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, one of the things I'd love to be, to just get some insight from you and the records and from the Akashic perspective, is this ascension process. I mean, we hear about it a lot. We're going through this great transformation. We're growing, we're expanding. People are becoming more aware of their, that they're human beings having a spiritual experience, not, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. They're spiritual beings having a human experience, not human beings trying to have this spiritual experience, right? And so, it's actually inherent to who and what we are, and that's becoming more prevalent and more aware. So, what does it look like from an Akashic perspective? And I know there's timelines, and maybe even you want to speak to that too. But different potentialities that are played out from this moment forward. But what are the likely, the possibilities and likelihoods around the future of humanity?
Well, it feels like the only thing that is inevitable and destined is radical transformation and this ascension, where the frequency on the planet is going to be getting higher and higher and higher. And what that does is it shakes up everything that is not in resonance with it, and it brings it all up to the surface to be healed. In order for something to heal, we have to become aware of it. We have to actually like feel it and experience it and alchemize it, transmute it, neutralize the karma related to it. So that's what we're seeing on a grand scale on the planet. And the more that we resist the ascension, the more that we resist this transformation, this growth, then the more challenging it can become. And with a lot of resistance in the field, the earth could be creating a lot of challenges for humanity in order for us to grow. One thing that we need to grow is to come into right alignment in our relationship with death. And it feels like if we continue to resist death and have this like perverted view of death, in reality, death is just a radical transformation. It's an immediate, instantaneous elevation of consciousness. It's a liberation from a lot of limiting stories and beliefs and perspectives. It's a return home to an essence that you could perhaps call more true to who you are. And it's like bringing you back into this quantum field of love and bliss and infinite possibility of like, okay, what's next? Like really returning you to your divine nature. That's the nature of death. And we have so many ideas of like resistance to death, but in order to transform, we really have to surrender to death, because a lot of who we have been is dying. A lot of our ideas are dying. Our perspectives on life, all of our beliefs are dying. And it feels like the more that we resist that, the more life could potentially just bring upon a lot of death to help us come into right alignment with death. So there could be a time of a lot of death and destruction. Inevitably, there will be a lot of time of death and destruction, but does that look like the graceful surrender of just allowing old ways of being to die, allowing perhaps our, our governing systems, like all these industries to die, a lot of our attachments, or do we just let them all die? Or if we resist it too much, then it feels like life sort of takes over and like does it for us.
Right.
It's like, if you're not going to let go of these industries that are destroying the planet and wake up to the impacts that you're having on all and think beyond your own like selfish needs and desires, then the planet will in some way enact some sort of natural disaster or something that makes it so that like, we no longer have like these, I saw the image of like Amazon trucks, like going around delivering things and all these things that are just all the fossil fuels that we're using, everything. It's like the planet, either we take care of it or the planet's like, all right, I'll take care of it.
Right.
And that could look potentially destructive in ways that like feel like destruction to us. Like if you think of like natural disasters or that type of thing, or it can be destructive in the form of like when you like are in a medicine ceremony and go through your own ego death, like just surrendering to the destruction, but in what could be perceived or deemed to be a more sort of graceful way.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And it's back to the caterpillar and butterfly, right? It's like things have to melt into a goo sometimes in order for the butterfly to be born, and that's what happens to the caterpillar cells. And the more we can honor and understand the process, the less we need to see it unfolding and react from a vibration in a state of fear. And that trusting the mystery, learning to trust everything, is such a powerful center. It's the way to step into the eye of the storm, I would say.
Yeah. Trusting everything and just opening our hearts to the nature of reality, the way in which everything's fleeting and ephemeral, and truly everything dies and changes and takes new form.
Right. So on the other side of any destruction, what does a butterfly look like in all this?
Whoa. So yeah, I tune into this vision all the time and it feels so good. I sometimes get like full body goosebumps. I sometimes cry. It's like a new humanity. And okay, first I see the frequency on the planet so high where like we all recognize how alive nature is. And it's like pure bliss play and like just feeling nature and the intelligence and the life force energy and the harmony with the animals. So I feel that. And then I feel the restoration of like the pristine of nature's pristine nature. It's like so much healing on the planet happens so quickly. We've seen how fast the planet can heal based on the beginnings of Corona, when we were all in quarantine and not moving around, how like we had dolphins in the Venice canals, like what? And it started to like run clear and we had less air pollution than we've had since like the 1950s. And whoa, everything cleaned up so quickly. That is the healing power of our planet. Like it can heal so quickly. So we'll see such a fast healing. And then humanity will be behaving in radically different ways where we are truly living in love, where our intention is love. We're living in harmony with each other. We are so empathically connected to one another, and we are so connected to the planet. We are all stewards for the planet. We recognize that she is our divine mother, and it is up to us to protect and provide for her because she gives us everything. She gives us life, and we live in reverence of her, in so much respect, and we live with her as one. She is our ally, and we treat her accordingly. We treat her as we would like our most precious like mother that we just love so much, like caring for her and just receiving her generosity and her unconditional love with so much gratitude and recognition and honor. So like a real reverence for the feminine, a real reverence for the masculine. I see unity between the masculine and feminine, where both energies are coming together as one, and we're recognizing how inseparable we truly are. And I see people living in like more tribal ways, where we're living in communities, we're living in very sustainable ways, we're loving each other and caring for each other. And there's a lot more presence, and there's a lot more play. There's so much play, and there's a deep enjoyment in the simple things. Like I see, like an example could be just like sitting and watching a sunset and experiencing like just pure, like almost like this orgasmic bliss state of like, whoa, I am alive. Like we're so dialed into the mystery and the miracle and the magnificence of this human experience. And we bring that to all that we do. It's like even like watering our gardens becomes like, whoa, and like gratitude for the food that is growing, and like biting into an apple. Like there's just so much presence and magic that awakens on the other side of this as we undergo all of these clearings and healings and this transformation.
Yeah, the what really comes up for me when you're saying that is one of the things that I really am working on. My initials are BBB, and I think that's by no mistake. It's like that finding that presence and tapping into that presence and the awe and the wonder of the little things, and not being in such a hurry to, as someone who's such a doer, right? To do, task list, go, and stopping and smelling the roses. And I think that is a shortcut to your own, ascension, if you will, in your own private YoUniverse, where if you can start making it a daily conscious effort, as Thich Nhat Hanh said, walk as if your feet are kissing the earth, and just focusing on, finding the beauty and awe and magic and gratitude in every little sunset, every bite of the apple, every, flower that you water. What you just described, if someone can, really recalibrate to start tuning in to that, talk about, the ultimate abundance and wealth, right? Presence. And so, yeah, that's an amazing thing to understand, that that's one thing we can all afford, and it just takes us, putting our attention on it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that it's just like, it's our destiny. I mean, we have choice around how we get there, but that's where we're heading.
Incredible. So how about, for those of us who think Star Trek Discovery is the coolest show of all time, even better than Game of Thrones. What do you, from the Akashic standpoint, do you also, I'm assuming, seeing along with this a lot of development with technology, and of course then you also have these concerns about the future timelines where we're, we give too much control or power to AI, or we integrate too much with our technology, and it becomes out of balance, and in the worst scenarios, we get taken over and destroyed. And I've heard some interesting things from people who claim to glimpse future timelines about different possibilities surrounding that, and even a split in mankind where some go one direction with fully integrating cyborg style humanity, versus those who really go the spiritual path and, are tapping into more of those, that technology, if you will. So I'm curious what you see.
I see a lot of potential like shifts around technology quite often. So like, okay, so in this moment, when I tune into likelihoods, it feels like there will be, not that there actually will be, but there's a possibility that some people on the planet will be heading more towards using more and more and more and more technology and getting really into technology. But ultimately, it's going to guide many of us back to nature. We have a lot to learn from the planet, a lot to learn from the earth. And it feels like she's truly inviting us home, many of us home. And it feels like the most exciting technology that's coming online is not so much in the material as much as it is the magic of our own consciousness. And it feels like that's the direction that humanity is heading in many ways. Like we're going to be becoming more telepathic, and a lot of like super abilities that we've perhaps heard of but never really seen or known personally, like around like like teleportation or like telekinesis, like being telepathic, being able to, I'm seeing like the image of the meditation guru just like floating in the air, like all of that is going to be becoming more real, and that's going to be the exciting technology. I feel like that's going to claim a lot of our focus in the times to come. But there are timelines where it feels like we can go down the route of technology, and there's actually potential timelines of like going down more destructive routes where like technology inevitably destroys us in some ways, and then there could be some sort of alien intervention that actually helps us, like almost like aliens could come in and bring in like a technology that helps us actually heal the destruction that we did because of some of our technology, like kind of experiments, like just kind of how we're all feeling right now. Like 5G is an experiment. We're not really sure if it's going to have like a destructive like nature to it, like more technologies like that, and then realizing like, whoa, that was actually kind of destructive, and then having ETs come in and be like, okay, let me help you clean this up.
Interesting. And yeah, I mean, you brought up 5G, and that's one that's kind of prevalent right now, where some countries are banning 5G, and of course America's not. So we have ads, promoting it, and how I approach a lot of these things, for better or for worse. For me, it's been for better. Coronavirus, same kind of thing for me personally. I give little to no energy to these, chemtrails or 5G or the coronavirus or whatever it is. I'm always focusing on, this like I'm going to be fine. My intuition's going to lead me right where I need to be. I'm going to, I trust the process that's unfolding. So, and that has served me very, very well. I've told the whole story my whole life. I don't believe in getting sick. I've, never been in a hospital since the day I was born, and can count on two hands the times I've been sick. And, so I'm curious from an Akashic perspective, what, since you brought it up, what you think about technology like 5G.
Yeah, I love your approach to it, Brandon. And I feel like when it's like 5G is going to impact a lot of different people very differently. And also a lot of different species and a lot of different animals very differently. I feel like the one perspective that is relevant for me personally, that may be relevant for some of our listeners, is to really wake up out of this idea of like, I'm a victim and there is some sort of external force that is so much stronger than my consciousness. Our consciousness is directing matter in many ways.
Right. And the big narratives out there that you're hearing fed back to you from a distance.
Yeah. So it's like, there are some people that are so EMF sensitive, but is that because they're so EMF sensitive, or is it because their belief in that? Like, we're actually creating these sensitivities for ourselves, and our consciousness is so powerful that we can alchemize and transmute a lot, including 5G. We are so resilient. Our bodies can adapt, but our bodies really need the support of our consciousness. We need to have faith in our body's ability to adapt, and we need to wake up out of this idea of like, I'm some sort of victim, and there are all these like poisonous, toxic, harmful things that are hurting me in the external world. Instead, we've got to take more of the mentality, which is what you spoke to, of like, I'm resilient, like I can adapt. And that's going to be more and more important as time goes on. And we move through these times of transformation and of potential challenges as well.
Right. Yeah, I fully agree with that. And it really empowers, he puts the power in your hand, in your hands to understand that you are, the story that you're telling around all of these things is more important than any narrative that you're being fed, because the reality is you can be fed infinite, especially these days. You give me anything and I can go find, every perspective on it. Disney is the devil. Disney's the best thing ever. I mean, name a company. Let me go search them and put the word scam after it, and I'll find stuff about them being, you know what I mean? So it's like, or the opposite. So there's so much information and from so many varying sources, and that's why for me it has just continually and even more so led me back to my own center, my own okay, what story am I weaving around this? And I've seen from the evidence that's produced in my own life that is extremely powerful to do.
Yeah, we get to choose our stories because we think that life is some one way.
Right.
It's not. We're creating it as we go, and we're creating it through our beliefs.
Right.
And through our consciousness. And I feel like there's still a lot of resistance in the collective human psyche around the true realization and embodiment of that.
Right. Yeah. I always say everything is neutral by nature, and the lens that we put on actually determines how it manifests ultimately. That your lover today can become your greatest enemy tomorrow, and and vice versa. Yes, so it's like, this idea that people who see everything as super black and white, I feel like are particularly challenged. There's an old song by the band Live. It's not a black and white world. Learn to see the beauty of gray, and I definitely believe that. And then my own ability to then shift it to becoming lighter and lightening the situation.
Yeah, we really are directing and guiding how matter impacts us according to our perspective and our beliefs.
Indeed. Well, this has been such a cool conversation, Daniela. I definitely, you have so much great wisdom to share, and it's definitely a testament to the power of tapping into the Akashic Records. For those who are interested in tapping in themselves, I mean, you shared the story earlier. You read a book and started, bam, you had this opening. I mean, is there anything in particular that you would recommend for people to develop their own intuition, or particularly to learn to start tapping into the records?
Yeah, I feel like the prerequisites to accessing the Akashic Records are a pure heart, a pure intentions, and to be able to come into this receptive, trusting state of mind.
Right.
So the more that we cultivate a meditative practice where we can come into stillness within ourselves and become quiet in our minds and like very receptive, the more available we will be to these perspectives, these insights, this divine healing energy from the Akashic Records. It also requires us to like fully and wholeheartedly trust ourselves and trust that we are one with this connection and that we are one with source and one with spirit. So when we're reorienting our consciousness to like become more aware of that consistently and letting go of any stories or ideas that we may have otherwise, this connects us more to Akashic perspective. I do host a training, which I would love to share with our audience.
Cool.
I was, a training on learning how to access the Akashic Records. And it's like shockingly easy and quite simple is what a lot of people share. They're often surprised by how intuitive and psychic they actually are. And of course, on this podcast, we kind of did like a general reading for an audience, but in the one-on-one readings, a lot of like really detailed, specific psychic information comes through. And people often think when they get one-on-one readings with me that I have some sort of special gift. And while there is some truth to that, everybody has that special gift. Like we are far more intuitive than many of us realize. A lot of us have been told ever since we're little kids when we feel something in our intuition, oh, it's just your imagination. It's just your imagination. But really, it's your imagination that birthed worlds. And the Akashic Records speak to us through our imagination. So as we learn how to like cultivate our trust and our imagination again, we can really become these conduits of like this incredible insight and information pretty much 24/7 that is really serving not only us in our lives, which will help liberate us from a lot of like the karmic cycles that we're in, a lot of the limiting beliefs that we play out in our lives, but also all of those around us, and help us like anchor in more love and more trust and more peace and fully show up as oracles for humanity, for the world. And it's really quite simple. We all have that possibility and potential. I believe that every human being on the planet has the potential to access higher perspective. That doesn't necessarily mean all will.
Right. Kind of like I always compare it to, a basketball player like Michael Jordan, for example. Everyone can make a shot. Not everyone is going to end up being Michael Jordan. However, if you watch even most recently, I'm not big on sports really so much these days, but when I was younger, I played a lot and I watched quite a bit. And particularly, I was like, perfect timing for his whole career. And I watched that very closely as a kid. And so looking back at this new documentary on Netflix is, fun for me because I remember all of it, and it's called The Last Dance. And one of the things that they really drive home is how dedicated and focused this guy was to, practicing.
Wow.
And he's just like a laser beam in his focus. I mean, he'd, lost a championship and the season's over and the next morning he's with his trainer, practicing for the next season, the guy's just like, and so it's like so many things in life. We can all step out onto the court and make a shot, and some may have more natural inclinations than others for certain things based off of their dharma, life path. And then there's that factor of putting in the energy and effort and focus and hard work and being willing to, to step up and do what, needs to be done to improve. And so, yeah, that comes to mind for me.
Yeah. And with this, we really have to be willing to surrender our perspectives and our beliefs and our judgments and a lot of our resentments. All of that dies away with Akashic perspective. We just forgive everything.
Right.
And we have to be willing also to look at ourselves and look at our own shadows and look at our own limitations and the way in which we have had a very skewed and distorted perspective of reality our entire lives. And we have to be willing to let go of our stories, because if we have any resistance to that, then we're just going to naturally resist a higher perspective.
Right. Right. Well, yeah, so cool. So many gems of wisdom shared here. And for those who would want to sign up for your training, what is the best way to do that? And what's the best way for them to follow you and your work and all that jazz?
So the information on the training is on my website, which is danielagill.love. The training is actually called Metamorphosis, speaking of the caterpillar and the butterfly.
Of course.
And they can register there. Yeah, I highly recommend getting a one-on-one reading, though, before registering for the training, because I have a unique way of accessing Akashic perspective. And I feel like that's valuable if someone's going to choose to learn from me, to first experience that.
Cool.
And also I'd love to connect with people. I share a lot on Facebook, sometimes on YouTube, Instagram. It's Daniela Gill Love. Yeah, I'd love to connect on social media.
Cool. And that's Daniela with one L and a Gill with one L, just FYI, you guys.
Yes.
Yeah, we can put a link down there too. But, before we let you completely off the hook, I almost forgot. I can't believe it. I always love to hear a story of synchronicity or serendipity or positive paranormal story. I got to imagine you have something up your sleeve to share. Little story time.
I have so many.
What a surprise.
So so many. The Akashic Records have just been so extraordinary. Well, a recent one that's been in my psyche, because it just felt so profound, was when the whole quarantine corona thing started. What I had planned was 6 months of international travel and a bunch of retreats lined up. So I was faced with, oh, wow, I'm about to fly to Bali, but do I want to be quarantined there for who knows how long? Let me feel into this. And my options were go to Bali, go to Costa Rica, go to Hawaii. I opened the Akashic Records and asked, where am I to be during this time? And I was shown Northern California, which did not occur to my intellectual mind at all. I was like, what? Northern California? It's cold and I don't even know people there. It just doesn't make any sense. And as I felt more into it, first I saw the redwoods, then I saw Northern California, then I saw this man's face. And I had met this man once for all of 5 minutes. I had gone to one of his spiritual events. He's a channel. And it's very interesting that I even ended up at his event. A friend invited me and it was like on a Monday afternoon and I had clients and I was like, no thanks. I generally just don't really consume or take in other channels or anything. I like to work with, cultivating mine.
Yep.
But for whatever reason, my intuition told me to go and I went, met this man for 5 minutes. So I see him in the Akashic Records. I'm like, okay, I'm going to trust this. And I reach out to him on Facebook. And sure enough, he lives in, his Facebook says he lives in San Francisco. So I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So this is lining up. He's in Northern California. And one thing leads to another. And I ask him, like, what are your quarantine plans? He's like, staying home. Like, who is this person? I'd met him once for 5 minutes out of an event. After an event, he probably thought I was like some fangirl, like just who knows. Right. Yeah, it was just very strange how it came together. It was very strange, Brandon. It was so weird. It was so random. Reach out to him on Facebook. I asked him if he has a room to rent. He's like, no. And then one of his roommates is like, hey, I'm going to stay in Hawaii. So then a room does open up. But then other roommates are like, no, she can't come because they were afraid of contracting coronavirus. And I would have been a potential threat, like moving in for the quarantine. And nobody knew me at all either. And it's like a community home. And then his channel was like, oh, no, she actually has to move in. And interestingly, I moved in and I ended up in relationship with this man who I would have never, ever even considered a relationship with because of how different we are. Like, there is no way we could have ended up together unless we were quarantined together. It is the only way it could have ever happened. And what has unfolded because of that connection and trusting that and how like weird it was, like I reached out to him on a Thursday night and moved in Saturday morning.
Wow.
Like it was very strange and just like up and left my whole life in LA, like everything, like just, packed up everything, got rid of it all. And
wow.
Yeah, what's unfolded because of that has been magical. And it was just my channel showing me his face, even though it made no sense. And then his channel being like, yo, she's got to move in, which made no sense to him. And then us like randomly ending up in a relationship and feeling like it was like an arranged marriage by spirit.
That's funny. That's a funny way to put it. Wow. How interesting. Very, very cool. Well, congratulations on that. So you're up there permanently, or, well, permanent's a strong word, but you no longer are residing in LA.
No, for now. But I think I'll be going to Hawaii soon.
Gotcha. Interesting. Well, wherever you are, Daniela, I look forward to the time that our paths are brought together again. You are such a light to the world, and this has been such a epic co-creation and share. Thank you so much for being a part of the Positive Head podcast.
Yeah, this was so much fun. Thank you.
I do have one last question for you, though, and it is this. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Daniela Gill?
Before you even asked the question, it just felt like I love you so much. It's like opening up to greater love, opening our hearts to more love. It's remembering who we are and playing and dancing within that eternally.
Yes. Love is the answer now. What was the question? Until next time, everyone, we do love you so much. Journey well. Also, before we sign off, I wanted to remind you about the game with the universe on our website. You can choose the first number that comes to your mind, and it'll pull up that episode number of the podcast. I've been saying this is a great way to co-create synchronicity and magic with your higher self for quite some time. And if you go to positivehead.com/universe, there is a super fun and simple interface to play this game with your higher self. I firmly believe just by setting the intention to play in this way, it opens up the door for magic, and it's a synchronistic way to hone in on nuggets of wisdom out of the huge catalog of episodes that are specifically appropriate for you at this time in your journey to becoming the next greatest and greatest version of yourself. And it also makes for a super fun way to spark the curiosity of friends and family by having them choose a number, so they'll hopefully go and check out their number as well, which I greatly appreciate because it helps us to spread the word about the podcast. Once again, the address is positivehead.com/universe. And also, our beloved sponsors Purium, makers of the best organic, non-GMO health products, is doing a $400 superfoods giveaway as part of the kickoff for the Ultimate Autumn Health Reset and Group Cleanse that starts in September. As you all probably know, I personally use Purium's products on the daily for several years now. Absolutely love them. I'm so grateful to be partnered with this stellar, environmentally minded company. If you guys want to get the details on how to enter the giveaway, they can be found on Instagram, search at superfood.social, or on Facebook at bit.ly/Autumn Health Reset. That's B as in boy, I, T as in tiger, .ly/Autumn Health Reset. They're going to select a winner pretty quick on August 28th, so act fast. Be sure to tag or mention myself or Positive Head in your entry, and you can also join our Positive Plant Posse group on Facebook, so our Purium Positive Head team leader, Robin Tala, can connect with you. Otherwise, may you always be healthy, wealthy, and wise.